All right, it looks like it's 1 o'clock on the dot. And let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Success Series. I am so excited that you guys are joining me. My name is Kimberly Broussard.
I'm Nathan Barnaba.
And Tara Gallup is our lovely producer. She'll be monitoring chat and sharing your wonderful ideas and strategies that you're putting in there. So, do you guys ever find yourself putting off tasks because you don't want to do them? Or do you find that you might start a task and you start researching or start doing things and you find yourself like Alice in Wonderland falling into a hole and you don't even complete the task and you started on something else? Well, if you've answered yes to those questions, then guess what? You're in the right place, because our topic today is procrastination. And we want to hear from you. So how you do that, and you guys have already been putting in your great ideas that you shared with us about the movies or the shows that you're watching. So you can go ahead and type and chat all of your tips and tricks. Tara already started interacting with you guys in there. So if you're new and it's at the bottom of your screen, just click on chat. Just make sure in the two-part, it either says everyone or attendees and panelists, depending if your Zoom app has been updated. All right. So this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about there's 4 different kinds of procrastinators. I didn't even know this, that there were 4 different types. We're going to talk about those 4 types and some of the challenges associated with those types. And then we're going to all come together and talk about strategies to combat that procrastination, okay? But before we dive into the content, you guys, I want to do a little self-reflection, a little soul searching, because if you're not new to Success Series with Nathan and I, we like to have you guys dig in deep. And before you figure out what type you are, it's important for you to understand why are some of the reasons that you procrastinate. Why is it that you procrastinate on certain things? I know that, and we want to hear from you guys. So put it in chat. What are some of the reasons why you procrastinate? And Nathan, I want you to think about it too. So I found that one of the reasons why I procrastinate is because, it's not fun for me. I don't really like to do it. And if I don't like to do it, I will put it off until I can't put it off anymore. One of the things the task that I don't like to do, and we're family now, so I can be honest, folding clothes. I don't like to do it. It will stay in the dryer, or if I have to wash another batch and move it into the dryer, I'll put it on my bed. That task will not get done because it's not fun to me. So Nathan, what's a reason why you procrastinate?
I would have to agree with you. Also, the tasks I don't like, I usually put them off. And also, if it's something new or different, I feel like it's a fear response. Like I don't want to get started because I don't want to make the wrong move and I don't know what to do. So I'll just put it off and leave it there.
Mm-hmm. And so Tara, what do we have in chat right now?
Chat is exploding, you guys. A lot of people talking about being perfectionists. A lot of people bringing up that if it's something that they don't want to do, something that they're not interested in, or they think they can do it quicker. Got that one from DeLacy. So much. Melissa mentioned the closed chair. Everybody has that closed chair when they don't want to fold their laundry. Me too. 100%.
Well, I'm loving that. I'm starting a folding clothes support group right after this if you want to stay behind.
A lot of people bringing up research. If it involves research, Lakedra says she puts it off and then gets overwhelmed when it comes close to the due date.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about a little bit about that. So now that we've done a little bit of self-reflection, a little bit of soul searching, and we've identified some of the reasons why we procrastinate, now I want to dive in and talk about the 4 types. And the 4 types that I'm going to talk about is the performer, the self-deprecator, the overbooker, and the novelty seeker. Those are the 4 types that we're going to talk about today. So Nathan, you want to start us off with the performer?
Yes. So the performer is that person who is like, you know what, I work well under pressure. Don't worry, I'll get it done because that's whenever I'm most productive, whenever my timeline is short. So they believe that, that shrinking timeline is not a bad thing. They think that, if the time shrinks, that's whenever they can, that's whenever they do their best work. So they don't worry, they just keep on putting it off. And sometimes that's not always the best because it's too late. So like it's not the worst type of procrastinator, but at the same time, you have to be careful because it might work for you one time, but if you keep doing it, eventually you'll hit a wall. And that's something to be mindful of. It's like no matter what, no matter what you're going, it's going to catch up with you eventually. So I have a question for you, Kim, in the audience. How can someone work well under pressure?
Well, I always thought that I was the person who worked well under pressure. And I don't know if it was because of my college years, because when that paper was due the morning of, guess who was typing? It was me trying to do. And I'm like, I work well under pressure. It'll be fine. And sometimes it worked out well for me. And then sometimes it didn't work well for me. And so I think, to me, I don't know if you can work well under pressure because you're filled with that stress, you're filled with anxiety. And so I don't know if that's the healthiest way to be productive. I'm not quite sure. Tara, what do you have in chat for that question?
Ooh, okay. So Diana says prioritize. Becky says it does describe me, and I'll tell you, me too, or I think it does. I say that. Crystal says she usually would have a couple of things already in place to add to the project, and Gretchen just says she doesn't think it works well either.
I think that, just stopping, I think it's just the stress and you're not giving it your all because you're rushing.
I have another one. Lakeitra says she's a witness. So working under pressure produces anxiety and depression.
It definitely does. And we think that burst of energy is like a good thing, but it's not. It's anxiety telling us like, hey, you need to catch up. So my second question is, what do you think the underlying cause of this issue? So like, what is the underlying cause of decreasing the time you have to tackle tasks?
I think it's that, for me, it's that I don't want to do it, or it's something that doesn't interest me. I'm not excited about it. And I know I have to be realistic. We're going to have to do tasks we don't want to do that aren't fun, that, but I know from with my papers and waiting till the due date that it's because I really didn't want to do the task. What about you, Nathan?
Me, I feel like I get lazy. So I start to get bored. And when I'm bored, I'll just put something off and I'll try to work on something else. And eventually I'll be consumed with something else. And eventually my timeline will just slowly drift away. And I'll be like, where the time went? Because I'm focused on so many other things because I don't want to be bored. And that's like self-sabotage.
That is definitely self-sabotage. Tara, what do you have in chat?
Let's see. We have a lot of people talking about just lack of good time management and boredom, reluctance to deal with some aspect of starting the task. And that's clear. I'm one of those people as well. If I'm reluctant to start it, it just keeps getting pushed off and further. And Terry says, I procrastinate on tasks that I don't have time to finish completely in one sitting.
Ooh. No matter what, being in the habit of putting that pressure on yourself, we have to be realistic. It's not something that we can sustain. It really can't. It would drive that stress level would just, it would be too much. So That second one that we're going to talk about is that self-deprecator. And that's that person who has I don't want to say a problem, but has an issue with that negative self-talk, adding that undue pressure on themselves. And so, they avoid work through, making excuses for themselves, or, saying I'm lazy or I can't do it. It's just, making that negative self-talk. And so, procrastinators, when we think of procrastinators, some might think, oh, you're just being lazy. And actually, procrastinators are the opposite of lazy.
Mhm.
So when we don't do something, we're usually hard on ourselves. Why do you think that people usually result to that negative self-talk?
I feel like it's because we're perfectionists.
Mm,
And society tells us, like, if we don't do something, then it's our fault. We did a bad thing. And that's usually where that self-talk comes from, because we actually believe it, that
mm,
I'm lazy, I can't do this. That's society telling us that we failed because we didn't do something.
mm. I think about that too, in regards to perfectionism, and we have to do everything. I know how I am, and I want to do everything perfectly. I want it to be great. And so that negative self-talk can easily creep in, and you start being your own worst enemy and trying to tackle those things. And, one of the root causes was, before I started working for the state, I used to work for a financial institution, and you couldn't mess up. Like, you would mess up people's money. So you couldn't, there were no room for error. And I carried that into the state. And so now I'm like, I can't mess up. I can't, I cannot. And it took, I'm still that way, but I have to allow myself some grace, and tell myself that, it's not a mistake. It's a learning opportunity. It's growth.
Mhm.
With what my position, just my position. Some might be in a position where you can't mess up. Nathan, what do you, I'm Nathan, I'm sorry, Tara, what do you have in chat?
So much. So a lot of people are bringing back up the perfectionists, and how that can, when you're a perfectionist, you tend to go back to that mindset. Melissa said society, and sometimes the way we were raised and what other people said to us.
Mhm.
Man, there's so many good things in here. It's hard to get to mention everybody. Seth says we often avoid tasks for emotional reasons, but saying things like I'm just a lazy person, it makes it seem like there's a more logical reason for why it happened.
Ooh.
I like that.
I said, now that I think about it, that is true. And so with this particular procrastinator, the self-deprecator, what do you think are some types of challenges that they could run into, Nathan?
I know for one, it will be mental health, like depleted mental health, because if you keep telling yourself these things and that self-talk, it will eventually like persuade your thoughts.
Mhm.
And I'm big on mental health. So like that type of language and things eventually can mess you up big time, and you'll have to start over. It could mess up your whole vibe. You could be the best performer, but just by thinking that and saying that, how often you say it, it could definitely like make a shift in how you perform and how you think about yourself.
Mhm.
What do you think?
And the challenge is that you fall through, your work falls through the cracks, or you don't get to those tasks, and then you become so overwhelmed.
Yep.
Because you put all of those tasks off, before you know it. And I hate to talk about my laundry, but you can't even get into bed because you have all of that laundry on your bed. Tara, what do you have in chat right now?
Vicky says, Nathan, you should read Soundtracks by John Acuff.
I'll check it out.
Interesting. So let's see. A lot of people are, really talking about, never thought of it that way, but definitely agree that procrastinators are perfectionists, Ronald says, some of those challenges could be anxiety and panic and,
Mhm.
all of those things that come up. Julie gave us a good Brene Brown quote. She says, change our vocabulary. So instead of saying I am lazy, say I didn't spend my time the way I wanted to.
Ooh.
Just a little nugget of advice there.
And just the way she shifted that can change your whole mindset. That's what I love about it.
Yeah.
Keep it coming, people. We have some good ones.
So next we have the overbooker. Now, this one is the person who is too busy. They'll probably have too many irons in the fire. They'll keep on taking work, and that's okay. But eventually they'll take on too many things that they get so overwhelmed that they do nothing at all. And I could definitely relate to this one because sometimes you want to stay busy, you want to stay like interested in your work, but when you take on too many things, eventually it crashes because you're looking at all of this and you're like, oh, I didn't even get started. And that's the downfall of it. So what do you think is the underlying cause of being too busy?
Nathan, I was reading the other day, on procrastination, and there was someone who said, lazy people simply don't do anything and are just fine with it. Procrastinators, on the other hand, have the desire to actually do something, but can't force themselves to start.
I like that.
Right? And it made me think that, procrastinators are not lazy people. Like, we want to do it. Sometimes we can't force ourselves to start or even know where to start. And I think maybe, that's one of the underlying causes of, being too busy is sometimes you don't know where to start on a project, or sometimes you just don't know how to say no. You want to be that team player. And we kind of talked about that during one of our work-life balance. You want to be that team player. You want to come through for your team. And so you don't know how to say no. And then, when you look at your task list, it's so overwhelming. You don't know what to do. Tara, what do you have in chat?
Oh, it is explosive over here in chat, but the overwhelming response to the underlying cause is just the lack of the ability to say no and setting boundaries. Crystal and Henry both said they want to fix other people's problems. If it's a group task, there's no option to do it. But if it's your own task, why rush, right? Yeah, there's a ton of good stuff in here.
And, we've talked about, that those underlying causes, but what do you guys think would be some of the challenges that a overbooker would run into? What do you think, Nathan? What are some of the challenges?
I would have to say like high anxiety, like just seeing everything like at once, and that going back to people thinking, oh my God, I have a burst of energy. No, that's anxiety because you're looking at all of this stuff like coming at you.
Yeah. I think another challenge they would run into is disorganization. Like you have so many things all over, and I love this picture because I see those sticky notes, and I had to move my method from the sticky notes because I couldn't keep up with my sticky notes. My sticky notes were flying all over, and so I do think that avoiding the task and maybe some disorganization would be some of the challenges that they would run into. Tara, what do you have?
Burnout. People that aren't organized, you end up not being organized. Tasks don't get done. Mistakes are made. People are talking about forgetfulness. And a lot of times when you overbook, it's because you're scared to delegate because you want it to be done right. You want to be the one to do it.
Oh, and I love that because it's so true. Delegation is hard. Delegation is hard. And it may not be done the way we want, but as long as the end result is the same, that's what matters. I see Gretchen said that she likes she's a sticky notes person too. I have them.
A lot of sticky note people in here.
I just can't, I have sticky notes. I just can't have more than 5 because then I won't be able to keep up with it. I just can't have more than 5. So I'm sorry, Nathan, go ahead.
So next we have the novelty seeker. And this is the person who they're like, oh, I have this grand idea and I need to get started on it. And they have all of these ideas, but after a few days or so, it's like they drop the idea and move on to something else. So if they're working on a project, they might think, oh, this will work for my project. I'll do this presentation. And eventually in their research, they'll find something else and they'll change it. And what'll happen is they'll keep changing their mind, that their timeline will just dwindle away without them noticing. And that's the tough part about it, because your ideas could be grand, but you need to stick with your idea and stop dropping it. So with this one, it's a little bit easier. So I want to know, what types of challenges would the novelty seeker run into?
Nathan, when you talked about this one, I felt personally attacked because I can relate to this one because it happened to me yesterday. I was tasked with doing research for a specific topic, and before I knew it, I was learning new software. I don't know how I ended up to the software, but it's just my big ideas that I had. And so I wanted to make it the best. And I had to realize that, Kim, you don't have enough time for this big grand idea. I'm going to need you to circle back to to what it was initially. And so, I think a challenge that I have is making sure that I complete the task and not fall into that rabbit hole. Tara, what do you have in chat?
Well, first one I see is squirrel. Distractions are difficult to overcome. Colette says, never getting started, never getting to your passion. Claire says, nothing is ever good enough, and you are always looking for the next great thing. And Lakidra says, multiple projects end up going undone. So you've got a lot of ideas, a lot of things started, and nothing ever ends up happening.
True.
Nathan, I love Lakidra. She said, Nathan is all in my business today. I feel you, Lakidra. I felt attacked on this one. I tell you what. And so now that we've discussed all of the 4 types of procrastinators, I definitely want to know which type are you. So we're going to do a poll. Okay. Oops, I got excited. We're going to do a poll. I want you to tell me, what type of procrastinator are you? Or maybe you don't procrastinate. Maybe you're all of them. I want you to go ahead and cast your votes on the screen for me.
I think this is the most people I've had where I've done a Zoom poll before, and watching your answers come in is so exciting.
It's the little things, Tara.
Right.
You guys are making me happy today, our audience. I love your participation.
Oh, look at that. It seems like all of the above is in the lead right now. So Nathan, while they're doing that, why don't you tell me, what type of procrastinator are you?
I could definitely say the performer, because sometimes I am that person who's like, under pressure, I got this, and I'll knock it out the park, and that doesn't always happen. And the overbooker, because I like to have different projects. I like variety because I do get bored easy, but I struggle with finding that sweet spot of like when it's too much. And that's the struggle of it, because I overbook myself like almost all the time. What about you?
I would say that I am definitely the novelty seeker and the overbooker. I have I can't say no. And I'm always falling. I might as well change my name to Alice. I'm always falling down that rabbit hole. Tara, what about you?
I'd say I'm a mix of the performer and the self-deprecator, unfortunately. Definitely, I don't know, and the rest of you guys, there is a TED Talk out there. Now I can't remember the guy's name, but if you look up the monkey procrastination TED Talk, it will come up, I promise you. And if you see that it like perfectly explains my procrastination style.
Thank you, Tara. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close that poll. Let's see the results. It looks like the one that won is all of the above, and I agree. I agree with that. I think that we have all have a little bit of all of them inside of us, but I do find that some come out more than others. So we have the performer at number 2, the overbooker at number 3, the self-deprecator, the novelty seeker. And we have some people who said, hey, I don't procrastinate, and I love it. And I hope that people who chose the I do not procrastinate, I hope that you guys are sharing your tips and tricks and strategies for us that do. So thank you so much, you guys, for participating in this poll. So let me go ahead. So now that we talked about, okay, we know the 4 different types. We know what they are. Now it's time for us to figure out, okay, how do we get out of that? What are some strategies that we can do for all of them?
Yeah, so just to piggyback off of what Kim said, the people who don't procrastinate, we're about to get into the strategies, and I would definitely personally appreciate all of y'all to share. One thing I like about this webinar is how we all share and help and share tips and tools with one another. So I'm excited. So please just share your strategy, share your tips, and let's be better at defeating procrastination. So for the performer, you may want to set up a schedule. For me personally, a schedule definitely helps, especially whenever I do a start date and I create deadlines. So what my team does is whenever we're building an e-learning course, we have to fill out a form and submit it to our supervisor. And on the form, we have to do our start date, when we plan to complete the audio, when we plan to complete scripting, when the course will be released. And I find that helps because in my mind, I know that, okay, I'm running late. I should have done this at this time. So it kind of helps me not procrastinate. Like, it helps me stay on track because I filled out this form and I have to hold myself accountable. And another tool that I like to use is the calendar app on my phone, and also just the Outlook calendar. Those things definitely help me plan out my day and write down when those due dates are. And it helps me stay on track.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a tool you want to share, Kim, and audience as well?
So something that I do is I definitely use my calendar. And something else that I do, because I know how I am, I set a whole bunch of different deadlines for myself. Like, I have a big deadline that my manager sets, but I set up some deadlines for pieces of a project for myself. So just for instance, if I need to create a PowerPoint for a specific training, I'll set a timeline for my outline. Okay, today's Monday, I'll finish my outline by Friday. Okay, now I have to create the PowerPoint. That's due next Friday. Mm-hmm. And so on and so forth until that time. So I have to set little mini deadlines for myself so that I don't wait for the big deadline. You get what I'm saying?
So you have a pre-deadline.
Yes. I have a bunch of pre-deadlines to make sure that I stay on task. Tara, what do you have in chat?
I'll start by saying I love that advice. Some pre-deadlines, awesome. Let's see, a lot of people talking about schedules, Microsoft Outlook, to-do lists. Pamela says when she has dead time, she goes ahead in the calendar and work in advance so she's not running up against the deadline. Lists, sticky notes, scheduled time frames. Mary says when she's overcommitted, running out of time, and has trouble prioritizing, she tries to remember to tell herself to do the next thing. Not the right thing, not the most important thing, not the first thing that's due, just whatever's next, closest, do it.
I love that, Mary.
And Claire says iced coffee.
Iced coffee is a blessing. I have to have my coffee in the morning. It makes me happy. It just switches my mood. I don't know if it's because I'm dependent on it or what, but whatever. As long as I'm happy, I guess. Our next one is that self-deprecator. And so some strategies, and I want to know from you, Nathan, as well as from the audience, what are some strategies for the self-deprecator, but some things that I know for that self-deprecator is that positive self-talk. You know, for those of you that struggle with that negative self-talk, just putting a affirmation board somewhere where you can see it, having a little positive self-talk jar to where when you recognize that that self-talk, that negative self-talk is coming in your head, you can, pull out a positive self-talk slip out of your positive self-talk jar. I loved what Julie put in that comment about Brene Brown, about changing that mindset and reframing that negative comment into a positive. Also, a time log. I know that we have a great training managing work time that teaches you how to monitor your time and when do you have the most energy and when doing specific tasks. And make sure that you take breaks. Make sure that you take breaks in between the tasks that you're doing. And also, when you're finished with those tasks, pat yourself on the back. Give yourself a little reward. Do something to make you happy and to reward yourself. Those are some great tips. So what about you, Nathan?
Well, I like what you said about the whole positive self-talk, because, I like my affirmations and I actually have one. So whenever I'm building an e-learning course or working on something and I don't feel productive, I have my go-to one, and I'll read it to you guys. It's, I am a doer. I will take action and get things accomplished. And what helps me is that I write it down first and I read it back to myself 3 times. And I could do this every hour, every morning. It just depends on my productivity level. But what I notice is that it kind of silences those thoughts, and it helps me like be productive because I know that I'm a doer, and affirmations definitely work.
I like that, Nathan. I'm gonna have to write that down and borrow that from you so that I can say that when that pops into my head. Tara, what do you have in chat?
So a lot of people agree with positive self-talk and those affirmations and posting it. Let's see. Claire says, ask herself if she would want her kids to talk about themselves the way that she's talking about herself. And I'll go ahead and extend that to your friends and your loved ones as well. If you would want somebody else that you care about talking about themselves that same way, you might want to change the way you speak to yourself. Seth says, take breaks and make them enjoyable. So prep enjoyable lunch and snacks. If you work in a mid-floor cubicle like I do, I know the 3 of us do, so take a break somewhere where there's natural light. Having friends with positive attitudes, going for walks, a lot of good stuff in here that I might have to try myself.
Right. Lakedra, you hit the nail on the head with that give yourself some grace.
Yes.
I am all about that. And we have to give ourselves grace, because I know we would give someone else grace. And I think we're hardest on ourselves in giving yourself that grace. So thank you.
So next we have the overbooker. And, a tip for that is to do your challenging task first. So we actually have a course initiative, CPTP SCS Comp Course Initiative. And basically in the course, they give you an activity on how to sort your task out from the most challenging to the first. And I use this method because basically if I do the most challenging first, at the end of the day or whenever I finish, I feel like I'm rewarding myself. Even though I'm still working, it feels like a reward. Another thing, you might want to break your whatever it is you're working on into smaller tasks. So like what we do with breaking up building a course, we might want to do with research first and then do scripting second, or send out an email first. It just depends how you just make sure you kind of delegate yourself smaller tasks. And the hardest thing, but it's so simple, is to say no. And what helps me with saying no is that if you're working on something and someone asks you to work on something, it's okay to say no, because if you're stretched out and overbooked, you're not going to give your best work and you're not going to give your best input. So it's kind of like although you want to be helpful, you're kind of like hurting the person that you're helping because you're not giving your full potential. So that's something that I had to like kind of train my mind to think about whenever I don't want to say no. It's okay to say no.
Mhm. And, just like we talked about in work-life balance with, you don't have to really say, no, I can't help you. It's the way you say it. So, I have a little bit on my plate right now. Would I be able to help you at a later time? Or, something of that nature. But I was so distracted by Laura in the comments who said, boy, those cookies look good. And I had to giggle because I'm like, yes, they sure do. I didn't notice that. But on another note, breaking it into those smaller tasks, with overbooking, that's something that I do. And that's why I have to break those tasks down so that I am not so overwhelmed. So those are some good strategies, Nathan. Tara, what do you have in chat?
I have to giggle too. A lot of these comments are about the cookies. But Ronald does say ask for help, and it is okay to do that. Absolutely. Angela says, yes, breaking it down into smaller tasks is a big one. Francis says some people are afraid to say no. So he's asking, how can you say no? If anybody has any advice for that.
What I do is I provide the why. So I can't do this because I'm busy with other things, because the why helps to make the connection. It's not like you're being ugly. You really can't because you're overwhelmed with other things. Or you can make suggestions. I can't help you, but I could do this later if you come back. You don't have to say just a strict no, but just provide some type of information.
Or if it's something that, they need help with, and there's instructions or a job aid out there somewhere, said, I'm currently in the middle of this, and, this has a strict deadline, but I do have this job aid that will be able to help you. And if you run into any problems, come back. Just, I love that, Nathan, because I'm a why person, and providing them with that why.
I love that answer, you guys. Thank you. Claire also says she tries to remember, while some people may be very good at juggling several responsibilities, it's not a strength of hers, but she has other strengths. And I love that. Reminding yourself that if it's not a strength of yours, don't go there. But hey, you have other things that you are really good at. And the affirmation.
Yep. And that's something that I have to keep in mind. I'm not very good at juggling a lot of things all at once. I start to feel overwhelmed. So I have to focus on one thing at a time, or it's gonna overwhelm me.
I like what Karen said too. She said she started setting her phone timer at home for 15 minutes, and we'll tackle each task just for 15 minutes because it's better than putting a task off because it's too daunting.
Ooh, I like that.
A lot of people like it.
I like that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to try that and see how that works.
Now, for the novelty seeker, you might want to start setting SMART goals. And just to remind you, the SMART goals have to be specific to what you're working on, measurable. So don't make any goal that's like super large, achievable, realistic, and timely. So make sure that you can stay on track with it. Also, another thing is just to have a time log. So it's kind of like going to those 50 minutes, like set a time, a direct time to how you're going to tackle a task, and follow that through and through. And one of my favorites, and one that I'm going to try, is to eliminate distractions. So what I notice is that if I do research or if I'm working on a project, I'll find an idea, but then I'll keep looking, and then I'll just like start over and over and over again. So once you have what you're looking for, silence your phone, get off of Google, and just get to work. Like, don't continue looking, because I notice that's my downfall. That's where I lose it. So what are some other strategies for the novelty seeker?
Well, Nathan, because I felt attacked when you described the novelty seeker, I'm going to share some of my tricks and tips that, I do. So I told you guys I already break down my task into smaller tasks and give myself some due dates to make sure that I'm doing that. Another thing that I do, I cut off all social media alerts. I don't get an alert when someone posts anything and my phone doesn't ding, because if it does, I'm going to pick up my phone and I'm going to look at it. I try to set some time and block it out on my calendar with a do not disturb if I have something with a firm deadline, and then I'll put my phone on silent. Now, this is something that I can do for my job. I'm not sure if other people would be able to silence their phone for a certain amount of time to stay focused. Something else, because I'm a squirrel, I do what Nathan, I try to do what Nathan said. I will try for the Google thing to try once I got my information, leave. And that way I won't fall down into that rabbit hole. But as you can see behind me, that's a window. You notice my desk is not facing the window, because guess what's going to happen? I'm going to be like this. So I try to make sure that I eliminate those distractions as much as I can, or block out some time to where I can just focus on what the task at hand. Tara, what do you have in chat?
Veronica says she does something called body doubling, and I'm curious about this. She said it works great at home too. So she invites someone over to hang out with her while she needs to do something, such as clean the house, and it keeps her on task. And when she's alone, she's much more distractible. So kind of like that accountability partner.
Oh, I like that. So it's the body doubling, and me inviting a friend over is not having them do the work while I watch. That they have to watch me, right?
She said right.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. I might try that. I'm going to try that out. Thank you, Veronica. Anything?
Ooh, Claire says she had to drastically change her relationship to social media and how active she was on it. Said it's bittersweet in some ways. It says there's an app called Enroll Me that can sort your personal email, which is super helpful regarding shopping ads.
I'm gonna need that. I'm gonna need that Unenroll Me. And I too had to do the same thing. Sometimes, I just recently, is it this year, Nathan, that I started the taking break from social media? I have to do that. So I have to do that sometimes. And, I definitely have to make sure that I don't get the alerts on my phone anymore. And I also turn my phone face down to where the screen's not up, so I don't see it light up or anything, because if that little light goes on, guess what? Curious George. You might as well just call me Curious George. I'm going to be on the phone.
I love it.
Now, for closing thoughts, I'll go first, Kim. I just want to thank everybody for their input, because procrastination is something that I struggle with, and it seems like most of us struggle with. I'm looking forward to using the tips and tools, and hopefully we can eliminate our procrastination and be better at being productive. What do you have, Kim?
What I like about this, and I love the fact that everybody shared, and you guys were, I realized that I'm not the only novelty seeker out there. I'm not the only procrastinator out there. That, sometimes, it does happen. And, you don't have to try every last thing that, all the strategies that we came up with. Just commit to one thing. And if you do find yourself procrastinating on a particular task, trying to do a little bit of soul searching and figuring out, okay, why am I procrastinating on this task? Oh, it's not something that I like. Okay, well, then that means if it's not something I like, that means that's something that I have to put at the top of my to-do list so that I could tackle it first and get it out the way so that I can leave the rest of the day on the things that I like to do, or whatever you can. And also, I forgot who said it in there, to give yourself some grace. Please give yourself some grace and just try to be the best that you can, or do the best that you can. Tara, what do we have in chat?
Just from Crystal, she says, you are not alone for sure. And she's teaching that to her child as well. Sharon asked a question. She said, will this presentation slides be available after the webinar? And I will go ahead and answer that for you, Sharon. All of our webinars are recorded and will be on YouTube. They will also be on Leo. I'm working to get that link to share that with you guys. They're going to tell you in a minute all about it though. And Denise says this was her first success series, excuse me, and she thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us, Denise.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Denise, and welcome. Welcome to the Success Series family. We're so excited to have you guys. So we want to let you guys know that, okay, in September, we just finished our Success Series on procrastination, but we have 2 more before the end of the year. Can you guys, we're already at the end of the year. I can't believe that we're almost at the end, and we have some great topics for you guys. So in October, our Success Series is about creating that positive work environment. We're going to talk about, Nathan is our positivity guru. So he's going to give us some tips and tricks and some tools to help you guys create that positive work environment. And then our next Success Series, which will be in November, is creating that meaningful connections. And do you guys struggle with, networking? Because I know that's one of my areas of enrichment. That's what I need to work on. So we're going to teach you guys how to improve your networking skills and create those genuine, meaningful relationships. Mm-hmm. So please don't miss out on these next 2 webinars. And don't forget, and for those of you that are new here, we're going to have a handout. So all these strategies that we just talked about, you're going to have this in a handout so that you can keep at your desk, so that in case you forget, what strategies are needed for your procrastination type. And you can find that those handouts and on our talent development page under Success Series webinars. You could click on it and it's going to bring up all the handouts from our past webinars. And also, if you want to view any of our past webinars, including this one, because this one is going to be on YouTube as well. So if you want to rewatch it, show it to, send it to a coworker. Send them to either YouTube, where they can type in Louisiana State Civil Service in the search field, or they can go into Leo. So we're in 2 places where there's no escaping us, okay? What you can do is in the search field, you're gonna type in webinar in Leo, and you can find those webinars just in case you don't have access to YouTube. Well, it's coming to an end, you guys. I really appreciate all of the ideas and the strategies. I know that chat was just going off, and I know Tara enjoyed herself. I could feel the smile from the screen because she was so excited on what you guys are doing. I hope that you at least try one of these strategies that we talked about today. And if you can, just let me know if it's working. Email me, tell me, hey, I tried this tip and it worked. I want to make sure that you guys are getting everything that you need for you to continue to be successful employees for the state. So I just want to let you know, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And don't forget to keep on learning. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Stay safe and dry. Thank you for joining us.